Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our discussion this morning on expanding the Midwest workforce through common sense immigration reform. We appreciate you joining us today. We're going to jump right in. To get things started, I'm going to turn it over to one of ABIC's co-chairs and a leader in the business community, Mr. Sam Scott.
The pandemic laid bare the essential needs for immigration reform. 72% of the essential workers during the pandemic were immigrants. We relied on them every day to rebuild and recover. Immigrant farmers worked and helped keep food on our tables during the heat of the summer. Healthcare workers took care of us. And during the global pandemic, immigrant entrepreneurs worked hard to save our local economies during the period of shuttered doors. Today, we'll hear from a number of different sectors of the economy that all say the same thing. We need workers, and our workers deserve dignity and respect. There are three pieces of legislation that currently exist that we want to see move forward. They are the Durbin-Graham Dream Act, the Crapo-Bennett Senate Companion Bill for the Farm Workers to Modernization Act, and the Secure Act for immigrants with temporary protected status. These solutions are economically important, morally right, and politically smart. We are urgently asking senators to take place on these three pieces of legislation, move forward with them so that we don't stall our pandemic economic recovery. And with that, I'll turn the program back to James O'Neill. James?
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. You've been a great leader within our organization, and we appreciate you sharing your time with us today. I'd like to introduce Sophia to share her story now. Sophia, if you can turn on your camera. We're very excited to have Sophia join us and share some of her experience with us today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sophia Ocampo, and my family and I are from Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm currently a student at Trinity Washington University here in Washington, D.C. My family and I came to the United States in the early 2000s, and we actually came here legally from Costa Rica. And after many, many years of trying to do everything legally here in the system, unfortunately, in 2017, we lost our status after we had applied for a green card and it got denied. So this brought a lot of trouble to my family financially, emotionally, just a lot of things kind of happening at once. And one of the things that I was very concerned and worried about was obviously my education, because as an undocumented immigrant, I'm not able to receive any federal financial aid. I can't get student loans, and just with the financials that my family has, I knew it was going to be very difficult for me to further my education after high school. And luckily, an education is something that my parents have always been very supportive of, and I knew that I wanted to go to college and pursue a career. But fortunately, I was able to apply for a scholarship called the Dream.us, and it's a full ride scholarship for students that are in locked out states, which means that that undocumented students are considered international students, so it's more expensive for us to attend college. And through that scholarship, I am now hopefully going to be graduating of this May 22nd, or May of 2022. So I'm very excited and I'm very fortunate, even though I am not a DACA recipient, because by the time that I lost my status, DACA had already been rescinded the first time. So I do not have DACA, but I do know a lot of students that do have the scholarship with me as well. At this university, a lot of them are DACA recipients, and they're so hardworking, they're so studious, and I just know that many of us are very fortunate that we were able to have this opportunity to attend college and not have to pay for it. But I know that there are so many out there in this country that don't have the same opportunities that I've been given. And I know that a lot of them do want to continue and they do want to further their education, but they're just not given the opportunity as others that have been born in this country. And I think it's a very important time for us to always be kind of invested in the future generations' education. But I think now is especially a very good time to just reach out and just explain and express why it's so important for people who have DACA or other undocumented immigrants have a pathway to citizenship, because we do want to contribute to this country and we do want to further our careers and do so many things, but we have so many limits put on us that we didn't really ask for. So I want to just thank you for the time for me to come here and speak, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Sophia. It takes a lot of courage to share your story, and even more in front of a crowd of people. So we really appreciate it. And it's helpful for us to keep in mind what's important about our topics today, and what's important are the people that are directly impacted by the immigration system. Next up, I want to introduce a champion for her students, especially her Dreamer students. Last week, I got to see the passion that she has up close. Please welcome the former president of Guilford College, Dr. Jane Fernandez.
Okay. I'm here today as a steering committee member on behalf of the President's Alliance on Higher Education and Immigration. We're comprised of over 500 college and university presidents and chancellors across 43 states. The President's Alliance and the chancellors and presidents that we represent are as committed as ever to securing a permanent legislative roadmap to citizenship for our nation's dreamers. And the matter is quite urgent to the colleges and universities who are members of our alliance. We believe this action needs to occur swiftly, very soon, especially in light of the recent federal decision. We're asking the Senate to move forward immediately on the legislation for dreamers, either through a bipartisan framework or, if necessary, budget reconciliation, or any other way that will make this work as soon as possible. Even before the decision, dreamers and DACA recipients, especially 181,000 DACA eligible students enrolled in colleges across this country, including my own, deserve this roadmap to citizenship that would allow aspiring Americans to obtain permanent status. As a college president, I have witnessed personally the immense contribution of dreamers on my campus. Permanent status is critical to ensure that our students and alumni are able to enter and thrive in their desired careers and fields. I can say with confidence that dreamers on the campuses where I have worked, on average, have higher GPAs, higher grade point averages. They graduate at higher rates of success, and they're more engaged in campus leadership than, on average, our own American citizens. To me, I often see evidence that dreamers are actually more engaged and committed citizens than our own American citizens who are students, who take things more for granted than the dreamers do. Dreamers comply with everything we ask them to do. They're eager to give back to the country. 93% of our dreamers are employed, and they pay $10 billion in taxes. They generate $20 billion in spending power. Dreamers are students, teachers, employers, entrepreneurs. 200,000 are essential workers, first responders, restaurant and grocery workers, farm workers, childcare providers. and 30,000 are in healthcare workers, including doctors and nurses. One of my own students, a DACA student, wants to be a doctor, and he's eager to work in rural area, where our country needs more doctors. And I cannot understand for the life of me why it's so hard to give citizenship to these people whom we have educated, who want to serve and make our country great. So I believe the time is now. We must act now and call on Congress with really serious intent to finally move forward on permanent protection for these bright and talented aspiring Americans.
Thank you, Dr. Fernandez. I always appreciate your very powerful testimony. Next up, I'd like to introduce another fantastic partner of ABIC's from the Libre Initiative, Mr. Cesar Grajales.
Thank you very much. Good morning, my name is Cesar Grajales. I'm the Public Affairs Director for the Libre Initiative. The Libre Initiative is a nonprofit, nonpartisan grassroots organization working for the Hispanic community across the USA. We are a resource for our community with information and events to help them achieve prosperity through free market principles and ideas. Our work spans on different range of topics such as increasing school options for K-12, reforming the criminal justice system, cutting taxes, cutting the red tape for businesses, etc. One of the topics where we invest the most is immigration reform. Our immigration system is complex and inefficient, built on laws that have not been updated in decades. Our economy has doubled in size and our population has increased by 30% since the last major reform to our immigration system. With millions of jobs unfilled, and a growing economy, it's imperative that we have a dynamic immigration system that is responsive to the needs and demands of the American market. Today's immigration system keeps too many decent, industrious people from fully participating in the American experience. One segment of this immigration population that we have been working closely are the DACA recipients. DACA recipients, as Dr. James mentioned, are already contributing members of our society, working in many different fields, from tech to healthcare industry. Many dreamers are now married with children. And according to estimates from the Center for Migration Studies, about 329,000 US children have at least one parent who is enrolled in DACA. Terminating the program without a solution would mean that well over 250,000 US children would be at risk of having one or both of their parents removed. Rescinding DACA will also harm these parents' ability to economically provide for their families. It is clear that DACA recipients live in a constant uncertainty, and that is why we advocate for a permanent solution to this segment of our population. We support the DREAM Act. However, recently, we have also called on lawmakers to work together to appease the compromise that can pass with enough support, which could include looking other pieces in addition to the DREAM Act, such as reform in agriculture, guest workers program, and also organizing the asylum reforms, also enhancing the resources for the border, such as the bill introduced, bipartisan bill introduced by Senator Cornyn and Senator Sinema from Arizona. So we asking for bipartisan leadership to solve this situation, not just for the DACA, these recipients, but for all segments of our populations that require some sort of process, legal process, so they can contribute and continue contributing in a legal way to the United States. So we encourage legislators from both parties to support legislation that will fix this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Cesar, for your words and for your partnership with ABIC. Next up, I'd like to introduce a man with an awe-inspiring story. He's a businessman, but he's also personally affected by this issue as a Venezuelan American. So, Mr. Alfonso Vidal, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, before I begin, I wanted to talk a little bit about Richard Lugar and the original DREAM Act. I met Senator Lugar back in 2007 when the DREAM Act was already an old idea. I remember talking about dreamers during our visit to Washington, D.C. with the National Hispanic Summit in 2007. It was long overdue then, and it is still overdue, of course. My name is Alfonso Vidal, and I came to Evansville, Indiana, back in 1997, seeking a safe place to live and establish my family after being kidnapped by Colombian guerrillas. We were kidnapped for 11 days down in the jungles of Colombia. I am originally from Venezuela, where I was born and raised until a leisure trip was cut short by the group FARC, and we were taken into Colombia. My wife and I met in college in our native country of Venezuela, and after the kidnapping, we got married and came here to Evansville, Indiana. We are two bilingual engineers with master's degrees that arrived to this area of the Midwest, of Southwest Indiana, to take advantage of the many opportunities that have been presented to us. Evansville was ready at the time for our backgrounds. It was the right place at the right time for us. We chose Evansville as our home. We love this country. We really love the Hoosier state. We love our new home in Southwest Indiana. And since 1997, we consider ourselves adopted Hoosiers. We have been blessed with many opportunities in this country. And the Evansville community embraced us as one of their own. In a very emotional spring day of 2013, we were sworn in as proud citizens of the United States of America. But it was not an easy process. We came in first under a tourist visa. That tourist visa, of course, came to a student visa, and that student visa later became a work permit. That work permit then later became an H-1B visa. And after many years, we obtained our green cards. And then finally, our citizenship in 2013. 16 years of a struggle, many expenses and uncertainty that finally paid off that spring day of our swearing. We were awarded what we consider the prize of what we worked so hard. Initially, we wanted to go back to our country that we thought we were preparing here and then being educated here to go back and invest in our lives in our home country. But socialism took over, and we made the decision to stay here in Evansville because we reckoned that the changes that Hugo Chavez was implemented in that country were going to fundamentally transform our society for generations to come. And it did. We wanted a different future and a different path for our family. And it was clear that the path was here in this country. We were drawn to the Hoosier hospitality and the Southwest Indiana values. There is no doubt that we worked really hard to stabilize our immigration status and succeed to the many opportunities presented to us. However, we had a path. We had a path to citizenship based on having technical degrees and advanced degrees. But many others don't have that path. They would work as hard as we did, but there was simply not a path to do it right. I'm an engineer with a master's degree, and after many years of hard work, I now own Vidal Plastics, a plastic compounder and recycler of resin to the injection molding industry. With our materials, others make plastic parts for the many industries. We support many we support many employees and their families. We produce materials right here in the heartland of our country, and we are growing. My wife, Daniela, she's a chancellor of Ivy Tech Community College in the Evansville campus. She's a chemical engineer with an MBA. She loves her job, and her team loves her. She's really an inspiration to many Latinos in our community. We are both very involved politically and with many community organizations, locally, regionally, and statewide. We have always felt the need and the responsibility to give back to this country. There is no doubt that we love being part of this community and make a difference. In fact, as you know, we're all proud to contribute together for the better future of our children and grandchildren. I know that many immigrants feel exactly the same way. I believe that my wife and I are not only the embodiment of the American dream, but we're also the embodiment of what immigrants can do in this country. But I'm not saying anything new or anything surprising. Immigration has been fueling innovation, investment, and entrepreneurship since the inception of this country. But I think that this time we are at a crossroads where we are presented with a choice of stepping on the gas or cut off the supply of gas to our society's progress. It is time to put our heads together to resolve our differences. I understand that we have many differences and concerns. I'm not naive. But it is time to come together to give others the necessary path to greatness, the path to invest, the path to innovate, the path to grow, and the path to American citizenship. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfonso, for sharing your story. It's a testament to what immigrants can accomplish and what they can contribute when we allow them citizenship, when we allow them to contribute. Next up, I'm really happy to introduce a brand new partner of ABIC from the Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Andy Johnston.
Well, good morning, everyone. And boy, it's hard to follow Alfonso in that story. Very inspiring to hear about his personal story, Vidal Plastics, and how he's trying to give back to make this a better place for everyone. And I was asked to talk about the labor struggles that our chamber members are facing, and I think it's no secret to anyone that that's the top issue we're hearing across the economy. And how does this impact immigration? Well, I mean, the data is clear, right? 0 metro regions have grown in this country without immigrants. Immigration is key to the growth of our communities. And building off what Sam Scott kind of started us off with, that we've been talking about this for a long time. I feel like we've been talking about comprehensive immigration reform for my entire time on this planet. It's time to come together and get something done because, as Alfonso mentioned, the pathways, there's so many ways to get to no, and you almost have to thread a needle to get to yes. And we need to fix that system. We need to overcome the differences, work through the challenges, because it's not just the right thing to do or the smart thing to do for the economy, it's the right thing to do for individuals. When I look at Western Michigan and what we're projecting for the next 10 years going into 2030, we're gonna add about 2,050 new jobs every year just due to growth. And when you start factoring in openings that are created by retirements or other migrations, we're looking at a number more in the neighborhood of 27,000 jobs per year. So these are staggering statistics. These are things we cannot fix without having a comprehensive solution to immigration reform. The time is now for it. Our future economy depends on the very outcome, and we're happy to be a part of this coalition. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy, for calling our attention to the labor shortages that your members of the chamber are facing. Unfortunately, as many of us know, those issues are not unique to the state of Michigan, and they are not unique to any single industry. Up next to share what her members are facing, please welcome Christine Hilmer, President of the Wisconsin Restaurant Association. Christine?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Christine Hilmer. I'm President and CEO for the Wisconsin Restaurant Association. We represent approximately 1,500 restaurants with more than 7,000 locations around our great state. Restaurants from all over Wisconsin and our country are struggling to find workers. Right now, it is the #1 issue facing our great restaurants. As they work to recover from the pandemic, it is the biggest impediment to their recovery. Right now, it's estimated that our sector will not fully recover until 2024. And I fear that without the availability of employees, including immigrants, the recovery will take even longer. Restaurant survival includes immigrants working to serve you in your favorite places to dine. Without immigrants, many great restaurants will continue to struggle and some will not survive. Hospitality has always embraced immigrants who are wanting to come to the United States to build a better life for themselves and their families. Restaurants are a place where hard work moves you up the ladder quickly, especially in the back of the house. Immigrants have always been a key element of the diverse and rich food culture, not only in our state, but in our nation. Many immigrants initially come here to work and send money home, then find that they can have a family-supporting career or become an entrepreneur. And then they find that restaurants can be a welcoming and supportive setting for their entrance into the United States. Specifically in Wisconsin, we have a demographic issue. Our population growth is flat. The truth is that we are quickly facing the reality that we don't have enough people of working age to fill the jobs that we already have. Add into the equation baby boomers retiring and leaving the workforce, and people being much more mobile and moving out of state. We are faced with the reality that we need workers in our state, including immigrants. They are part of the solution to this problem. Restaurants are the cornerstones of our communities, whether they are large or small, urban or rural, quick serve or sit down. They are places for people to gather, to celebrate, to mourn, to nourish their families. It's a place for busy parents to feed their families as they navigate their busy schedules. Restaurants need workers to survive, and immigrants are a part of the overall solution that can help alleviate their lack of available workers. We need comprehensive immigration reform so that we can have the workers needed in our restaurants, the hospitality sector, and the Wisconsin economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. And we appreciate your new partnership as well. The labor struggles facing America are very real and very detrimental. But one industry that feels that labor pinch perhaps the most is the agriculture industry. I'm very honored to bring up next a representative from the United Farm Workers Foundation in Michigan, Ms. Guadalupe Perales. Guadalupe, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lupita Perales, and I serve as the UFW Foundation's Michigan State Coordinator. For 15 years, the UFW Foundation has mobilized farm workers across the country to advocate for more equitable policies such as immigration reform, pesticide protections, heat standards, hazard pay, and other worker protections. My family works in agriculture here in Michigan. I have family members who have risked their lives working in the fields during the pandemic to provide food for the American people. They have worked picking and pruning blueberries, peaches, Christmas trees. I myself grew up picking blueberries as well. My Michigan farm worker leaders at this very moment are picking blueberries and working 10 to 12 hours a day. Michigan is one of the nation's largest agricultural states, and that's possible thanks to nearly 80,000 Michigan farm workers. Michigan is almost home to approximately 40,000 undocumented farm workers. Around the US, there are about 2.4 million farm workers. At least half of them are undocumented immigrants. And for more than a year, they have been essential workers keeping America fed even in the midst of the most uncertain times. The food we all eat at home, in restaurants, and in cafeterias across our nation is only possible thanks to the labor of undocumented agriculture workers. When we hear from farm workers in Michigan and across the US, they tell us of their hope to be able to work freely without worrying about if they're going to make it back home after a long shift in the fields. At the heart of the plight of farm workers is the lack of immigration status. Farm workers in the US have been historically excluded from many of the rights and benefits that protect other workers, such as overtime pay, minimum wage, partly because many are immigrants and do not have a legal status. Fear of deportation, fear of family separation can cause undocumented farm workers to have higher risk to occupational hazards because they fear speaking up about dangerous working conditions. Farm workers are scared to demand their rights due to their status. They fear retaliation. They fear their hours being cut and losing their job. They fear not being able to feed their own families. Undocumented farm workers are also less likely to file complaints or demand protections they have a right to. A path to citizenship for farm workers would improve their rights, their health, and well-being. It would stabilize not just our agriculture workforce, but the entire U.S. food and economy. Undocumented farm workers deserve a pathway to citizenship. Polls indicate the American public supports legislation that allows farm workers to apply for legal status. Both Republican and Democratic voters support a pathway to citizenship. The bipartisan Farm Worker and Farm Employers supported Farm Workforce Modernization Act that would allow undocumented farm workers to earn the right to this country permanently. And we urge the Senate to act urgently. We know Congress has the chance right now to protect farm workers from deportation by passing a pathway to citizenship. Action is needed this year. Thank you, y si se puede.
Gracias, Lupita, and we're so glad that you could join us today. And we are very happy to be fighting alongside you for the Farm Workforce Modernization Act and for legal status of farm workers across the country. I'm excited now to bring up another new partner to ABIC, Mr. Chris Alpers, who is the incoming chair of US Apple and the owner of his own apple and cherry operation. Take it away, Chris.
I'm pleased today to join you to briefly talk about the challenges my organization's faced, past and present, regarding labor. First, a little bit about myself. I'm a third-generation apple and cherry grower, raising around 1,100 acres on Michigan's Leelanau Peninsula. My wife, Jessica, also comes from an apple farming background and is a seventh-generation grower. If our children someday were to choose the same path, they would fall into a long line of growers proud of their work, providing the world with high quality and healthy fruit. As you mentioned, I'm the incoming chair of the US Apple Association. I've used my time with the association to speak with growers in Michigan, throughout the Midwest, and all around the country about their experiences with labor. Theirs are very similar to mine. We employ up to 50 workers on a seasonal basis. 30 of those are typically at one time for 6-week periods, either during cherry season or apple season. Farming is much like running any other business, attempting to mitigate risk and capitalize on opportunities. What is somewhat unique is we spend money 11 months a year and attempt to recoup it all in a few short weeks during the sporadic time we call harvest. These few weeks of harvest, it is imperative that we have labor with time-sensitive crops like cherries and apples. My biggest worry is not being able to secure adequate labor during these times. There is no insurance for no labor. We used to rely solely on a domestic workforce, but it became increasingly difficult to secure adequate workforce in Michigan, so we were forced to turn to the H-2A program. This is the case with many of my colleagues in Michigan growing apples and cherries. 10 years ago, I don't think many of my neighbors were using the program or have ever even heard of it. 5 years ago, when we got ourselves into this position where we couldn't secure a domestic workforce, we began to investigate it, and since then, it's grown into a necessity for us. We are grateful to have the H-2A program as an option, but it's bureaucratic, cumbersome, and expensive. In 2016, when we first started looking at the program, the wage rate in Michigan was $12.75. This year, it is $14.72, an increase of about 15% over 5 years. Many parts of the country have seen much higher jumps in a single year. The increase thus hasn't been spread out evenly over the following years. It fluctuates with a lot of volatility. There's no way for me to predict what's going to happen year to year with the adverse wage rate. Along the same thing is the price of produce has not risen with it. The Farm Work Modernization Act would cap increases at 3.25%. This would allow me to plan and provide some stability for my workforce. The H-2A program is prescriptive, lacks common sense, strict timelines enforced for recruiting and other metrics. The Farm Work Modernization Act would streamline filing by allowing for one single point of following and allow simultaneous filing with multiple agencies. Currently, we have to file with 3 different government agencies. Each filing is dependent on the previous agency's approval. If one is behind, all are behind. One interesting thing is still filing with the USCIS. They're still utilizing snail mail and has caused some serious delays over the course of the pandemic when there was issues with the post office. It's time for that to come into the 21st century. I have to predict in May the exact days in September and October when my harvest will begin and how many workers will be needed. This is one of the biggest problems. So many external factors out of the user's control in small windows of time dictate how much help is needed. It's incredibly costly for an employer like me to have 30 workers 3 weeks too early with no work because of the growing conditions. It's more costly, I would argue, to have a delay in the processing system. I've been here and very nearly lost a cherry harvest because of a delay with some processing. Again, there's no insurance for no labor, and 1 year without labor would put myself and other growers like me out of business. In the end, we find a way to make the program work, but the constraints are too much. It's time for something to change. While Red Path Orchards utilizes the H2A program, we continue to employ workers outside of the program, folks who live locally and have been working in agriculture, and in many cases, for us, much of their lives. This is true with growers all over Michigan. Some whom utilize the H2A program, some don't. It's imperative that we find solutions to keep the apple and cherry industry in Michigan vibrant. The Farm Work Modernization Act provides that certainty for these workers and growers who employ them by providing a path for them to continue working legally in agriculture. We need reform now. I would call on the Senate, including my senators, Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters, to follow the lead of the House and pass bipartisan legislation now. Without access to a stable workforce, growers like me will continue to struggle to prioritize reinvesting in our businesses and expanding them because of the risk associated with no labor. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Chris. H2A reform is absolutely vital to the agriculture industry, and we will continue to work with you to accomplish that reform. Moving to a new sector of the agriculture economy, I'd like to bring up a great and knowledgeable friend, Mr. Steve Obert, who is the Executive Director of the Indiana Dairy Producers, as well as a dairy producer himself. Steve?
Good morning, James. It's great to be here, and I consider it a real honor to join the other presenters here this morning to talk about an issue that is so critical to our businesses, but more so critical to the individual lives and the families of these workers. So I am Executive Director of Indiana Dairy Producers. Our dairy farm family members milk, care for, and feed over 70% of the cows in Indiana. And in addition to that, my family, sons being 6 generations, we milk about 1,200 cows in Southwest Indiana. So this is an issue that not only I deal with daily with Indiana Dairy Producers, but also on our own farm. It is a daily issue that we have to work with. And, you know, I was thinking this morning, you know, as I accompanied my dad to various dairy meetings or visited other dairy farms as a young boy, the really good cow guys used to say, you know, if we take good care of your cows, they're going to take good care of you. Well, our industry has changed to the point where as we've grown, we depend on people. And we can now say that, you know, if we take good care of our people, they're going to take good care of our cows, and those cows are going to take good care of all of us. It's important as we know the changes that have taken place within the United States dairy industry, the commitment towards greater sustainability. And if you look at, you know, in the 10-year period between 2007 and 2017, we've seen our industry reduce the amount of water used per gallon of milk by 30%. We've reduced land by 21%, and we've reduced our carbon footprint by 19%. Since 1944, we've reduced our carbon emissions per gallon of milk by 63%. And that doesn't get accomplished without having people on the farm that can care for the cows. We have to have cows that are more productive than they were in the past. And this has kind of been the trend in our industry from all along. Indiana hires about 20,000 direct jobs on their farms. 75% of them are filled by immigrant workers. And so the importance of this issue is critical, and not only onto our farms, but those indirect jobs, such as the services that support our farms, such as custom waste management haulers, or silage harvesting crews as well use these workers. So as we move forward, I think it's so critical for us to see this issue. Yes, what we're wanting to do is fix something that's been broken for over 30 years, since 1986. We created in 1986 an H-2A program which provided for seasonal workers. But when you look at the livestock industry and many other agriculture industries where we need workers year-round, the legislation and the laws do not fit our industry. And so it's critical that we pass this Farm Workforce Modernization Act, and it provides a lot of interesting opportunities for our industry with Title I, creating the certified agricultural workers, and then the improvements in the H-2A program. And along with that, in Title III, it calls for mandatory E-Verify, which helps answer some of the concerns that some of our elected officials might have with wanting to fix it for good, not allowing this to resurface years down the road. So for my industry and for my family, I see this, real simply as good business policy with a conscience. The dignity of work is not determined by the job, but by the fact it's being done by a person. And so when we can combine those two things, we have win-win situations. So it's just a great, I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this program. And again, once again, advocate on behalf of the people in our industry and for our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. It's been great working with you on this legislation, and I really appreciate you taking the time away from your farm to share your voice today. One of ABIC's closest partners on the Farm Workforce Modernization Act has been American Hort. American Hort, like the rest of the organizations joining us today, recognize immigration reform both as economically vital, but also as a moral imperative for the dignity of the workers that keep our economy going. I am so pleased to introduce a nursery president as well as a member of American Hort, Ms. Kim Hainsfurther. Go ahead, Kim.
Good morning. On behalf of the staff of Forest Keeling and our industry, thank you for this opportunity to speak to the importance of Congress coming together to achieve common sense immigration reform. Forest Keeling is a family-owned operation with 50 full-time employees, and we grow to over 75 in our peak season. We've been in operation for almost 75 years. Forest Keeling is the region's largest producer of nearly 400 native plant species. These species are used in critical environmental projects ranging from restoration, reclamation, remediation, and mitigation, providing essential ecosystem services. Forest Keeling also is a leading producer of specialty crops that are in high demand for commercial orchardists and agroforestry applications, providing food crops and much needed supplemental income to farmers. Others this morning have addressed the labor shortage issue, and that is also an area of great pain and concern to our organization. However, I want to speak to you about the untapped talent and potential that we have discovered on our journey of working with immigrant labor. Lupe Rios crossed the border at the age of 16 following the death of his father. Lupe went to work in the fields of California as a way to provide for his mother and remaining siblings in Mexico. Somehow, Lupe found his way to Missouri, eventually acquired legal status, and we had the honor of attending his naturalization ceremony as Lupe proudly became a U.S. citizen. Along the way, Lupe attained his GED. He graduated cum laude from a local university, and in his desire to give back to his country, Lupe joined the Missouri National Guard. He's moved up in rank and served deployments as an MP in Kosovo and in Afghanistan as a member of the elite agricultural development team, utilizing skills learned on the job here at Forest Healing. Lupe is currently serving his third deployment, and I don't think I'm allowed to say where, but we wish him Godspeed. Lupe began his career at Forest Healing as a field worker, and today Lupe is our Vice President of Production. We also employ 4 individuals that have DACA status. One is the head of our propagation department, the most critical and technical position of this operation. Without her good work and success, we would not have a crop every year. She and her husband have purchased land, built a home, and are raising 3 fine sons. But their future remains in limbo as 8 years have passed since acquiring DACA status, and it's still unresolved. We have been advocates for immigration reform for more than 25 years, and there has been little, if any, progress. I urge the senators, especially the Missouri Senators Blunt and Hawley, to support efforts to reach agreements on these important immigration acts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. Lupe's story, again, shows us what is possible when we give immigrants a chance to succeed. And we will keep fighting with you and with American Port to get the Farm Workforce Modernization Act across the finish line and provide your nursery with the labor that you need. Next up, from Iowa, another American Port member, I'm proud to introduce Mr. Tom Hughes.
Yes, good morning, James, and good morning to all that are part of this great conference this morning. I'm proud to be able to be a part of this as well, talking about immigration as how important it is not only to our industry and our business, but to agriculture in general, as well as to society in America, in my humble opinion. As James said, my name is Tom Hughes with Hughes Nursery and Landscaping here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I'm a 4th generation nurseryman. My great-grandfather started growing trees here in Cedar Rapids in 1908, but his story starts actually before that, as he was an immigrant who was born in Europe, migrated to this country for the American dream, as so many immigrants do and have, and that's what this country has been built on over the years. He came here to help support his family, to help grow this country and what it could be for him. And our family's been able to continue that tradition, and we're proud of that fact that we could do that. My grandfather, my father, and now myself and my brother are continuing on that tradition, and we're proud of it. We are a landscape nursery where we're growing trees and shrubs here in the fields, and then installing them in our communities to support our local businesses and residences around the community here in the metro area. And our labor force is just like everybody else's, lacking in a lot of ways. For years, my great-grandfather and grandfather were able to support their business based off of farm workers. It was generally in the state of Iowa, a lot of farm kids, boys and girls that grew up on the farm, that were looking for different ways, and they could get into landscaping and the nursery business, very similar to the farm background. And that's kind of gone by the wayside as they've had better opportunities, and they've had opportunities to grow the kids, and so they don't have that interest in coming back and working on the farm or working in the nursery business. And it's changed our model significantly. We are continuing to struggle for work and labor, whether it be locally or immigrants in any form or fashion, to find the labor we need to be able to support our business. I'm also a member of American Hort, as James said, currently serving on the board of directors for American Hort. I finished as chairmanship my last year here just a couple of weeks ago. And during that chairmanship time, had a great opportunity, and while I'm serving on the board, to meet with and talk with members around the country. American Hort represents the green industry, from nursery growers to greenhouse growers, landscapers around our country, from Maine to California, Washington to Florida, and states in between, North Dakota, Missouri, Tennessee, etc. All of our members have the number one problem that they have right now is labor. The ability to find labor, to be able to keep labor, and to find not only just basic labor, but skilled labor, those that are educated And if you go back to that story that Kim just shared about Lupe, people that are willing, that are excited, and that want to learn and grow in our industry, the opportunities exist. The local workforce, the domestic workforce is not interested and not available in the numbers that we need as an industry. And that's why the immigrant labor has been critical for our members. My business alone would not sustain. We would not have a business without the immigrant labor. Every person, every business in our industry needs immigrant labor to start the plants. Each one of the trees that I grow and that I sell to my community is started by an immigrant hand at some point or passion. Our supply chains are so intertwined that it's critical that we have that labor and that continuity to be able to continue our industry as a whole. And so therefore, it's because of that, although we have as an industry and as an American Horde Association and as a family business have been struggling with the immigration challenges and policies over many, many decades, I realize that there's a lot of differences in opinions. I realize that there's no perfect answer to a very challenging system, both from an economic standpoint as well as societal standpoint. Yet through those areas and concerns, I hope and pray that we can come together as a country, as legislators, to come up with some kind of compromise that can be better for all, both for the business as well as the families that so importantly want this process to move forward. The House has started a good bill. It has an opportunity to continue to go forward. I hope that the Senate will take that up, will sit down at the table, will make some compromises. And I'm urging my senators here in the great state of Iowa, Senator Ernst and Senator Grassley, to realize that there is no perfect answer, but we need to come together as Americans to help solve this issue for the betterment for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And as we can see, the worker shortage is not unique to any one state. It's a problem that we need solutions for the entire Midwest region as well as the entire country. Next up, from a new state, where I'm excited to introduce from Wisconsin, Mr. Derrick Hall.
Good morning, everyone. As James said, I'm Derrick Hall. I am a partner in third-generation nurserymen in Wisconsin. Our family was started our business was started in 1955 by my grandfather, and we found very early on, as many others have said, that the high schoolers and local farm workers were just unavailable and unwilling to work outside with their hands. And about 15 years ago, we moved into the H-2A program, and it has really revolutionized our business. Having consistent, experienced workforce year after year has been exactly what it has taken to bring our nursery to the next level. And without that, I don't think we would be here today. Our nursery has 30 full-time employees, ranging from executive staff to sales staff, as well as growers and everything from there. But we wouldn't have those full-time employees if it weren't for our 100 immigrant laborers as part of the H-2A program. And I really do believe, as others have said, that we need to keep improving the H-2A program. It is cumbersome. There are many great points to it, but we need to streamline the process. We need to make this process easier, so it doesn't need to go through 3 government agencies. It doesn't, every year, every nursery has to put their planning together for their pricing for the coming year, and we are doing that the year before the year prior to when the sale will take place, and then the AWER is released usually at the end of the year. So we are making bets every year on whether the AWER will go up 5% or even 10%. There's just a lot of challenges for business owners when we're trying to compete in a very competitive market with small margins and Mother Nature to compete with. It is, we definitely need to move towards common sense reform. And I think the Farm Workforce Modernization Act is a very, very good place to go. I encourage Ron Johnson to support the Senate version of the Farm Workforce Modernization Act here in Wisconsin. And I hope it does move forward because we do need help on bringing common sense reform to the H-2A program and other areas of immigration in the U.S. Thank you.
Thank you, Derrick. And to close out our program today, our last speaker is going to be Mr. Tom Demoland. Go ahead, Tom.
Good morning. Tom Demoland, a president and CEO of Willoway Nurseries in Ohio and past board member of Milton Court. We're a 68-year-old family nursery, and our current workforce is about 400 people and made up of 165 full-time people and also 235 seasonal H-2A guest workers. We are a drug-free workplace, and we've been in E-Verify as long as we've been in the H-2A program. We've been in the H-2A program for 22 years and experienced many of the problematic pitfalls of the current program over the years. Many people ask, why don't we just hire local people and avoid the aggravation of the current guest worker program? Well, the answer is real obvious. Even with positive recruitment and offering $15.31 an hour, no one comes for jobs. The nursery industry, like many of the people we talked about this morning, is in agriculture, it's very time sensitive. And if many of our tasks in the production cycle are not done on time, the crops will be late to market, or quality standards will suffer, or they could just die. Without an H-2A workforce, there would be no reason for us to have the 165 full-time positions that we currently have in a wide variety of full-time jobs, from mechanics, office workers, salespeople, and so forth. So we need that seasonal workforce on time and when at the beginning of each season. So I'm asking our Senator Rob Portman and other senators to please consider moving forward with the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. And some of the reasons we need this in place and need it done quickly is the bill addresses many of the pitfalls of the current H-2A program. One being the methodology of how the current program sets the adverse effective wage. And I want to be clear about, when you start talking about wages, it's not really the rate that agriculture has to pay as much as the methodology of how and when they calculate the issue. Similar to what Derrick had just mentioned, the program needs to be based on facts, and we know what that percentage of increase is because we're doing budgets and planning for the future, a year in advance, and not knowing what our wages are going to be. It's really tough to come up with what our selling price needs to be and if we're going to be profitable for that year. Other pitfalls of current bureaucracy is for workers to obtain green cards. We've got trained, experienced workers that want to come to this country and contribute to society, filling these jobs that nobody else wants. However, the current system isn't very friendly and doesn't allow any ability to move into a full-time position. So in closing, immigration and securing a legal workforce and a workable guest worker program has been a political football for the last 20 years. But I started going to Washington in the late 1990s to discuss why this legislation needs to be acted on. And many times the conversation stops with, well, if we pass this bill, we would be rewarding illegal behavior. I would suggest by doing nothing, we've rewarded a generation with amnesty. This bill allows for people in the shadows to earn their right to be in this country, fix the problem that has persisted for decades. Nearly a generation has gone by, and we're still talking about it. It's time for action to enact this bill and fix the American ag worker program. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for joining us today. Just to close out here, I know we're a little over time, and I apologize for that. But as our speakers today have demonstrated, the Midwest region and the nation as a whole are experiencing a massive and detrimental labor shortage. Domestic workers are simply not enough to fill the needs that small businesses, restaurant owners, and farmers have. We need solutions that solve this problem, as well as recognize and reward the dignity and hard work of the people that are already doing the necessary and backbreaking labor to keep our economy running. We ask all the senators from the Midwest to support the Durbin-Graham DREAM Act, the Bennett-Crapo Farm Workforce Modernization Act, and the SECURE Act to stabilize our nation's workforce and provide new access to labor markets for the business owners that need them. We cannot afford to kick this can down the road again. Inaction in 2021 is unacceptable. Finally, we urge you on this call today to contact your senators and express your support for this legislation. Let them know that these common sense pieces of legislation are economically important and morally right. This concludes our program for the day. I want to thank you all for coming, and please visit us at abic.us to join the movement for immigration reform. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.